teachers should not be scared and should be stoked. I think we should be excited about AI. Teaching's never going away. One thing that you can't replace is human connection. What you're doing is very important.
Welcome back to Educator University. As teachers, we are having to deal with AI in the classroom, but really it's a reality for students once they leave our schools. Today I have a guest on who's going to share his experience with AI being a computer engineer. I think he's the best one in the industry, but I'm a little biased. He's my brother. But in reality, he's been doing this for quite a while and is going to share his experience with us and what he's seeing and how we can prepare our students for the real world. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Annie.
We have teachers from all kinds of backgrounds, so maybe you could just tell us in your words what AI is, what it stands for, and what qualifies as AI.
So AI basically is artificial intelligence. Just in the industry is like, what is something coming from usually a statistical kind of model and coming out to you. And so that statistical model usually basically inputs whether it's pictures or words and outputs something else based off of those models. Depending on who you're asking, there's other people that will use AI as kind of like a snake oil that like our company uses AI. And sometimes it's just like they cover the people that are happening. And that was a huge scandal that just came out. But in reality, it's usually a statistical model that's getting put in and then new information is getting put out. So that's where the artificial intelligence comes out.
Yeah, that's good to know. And so qualifies as AI, like people are thinking ChatGPT is AI. What else is AI that we teachers might understand? Like some
And yeah, that's a great
models.
question. And there's so many different ones out there right now. Like you'll see every company says they do it. And so you got ChatGPT, you got probably Gemini, Google Workspaces, Anthropic has a bunch of couple. There's a lot of like, I'm not sure if you saw Google came out with a bunch recently about like they have Flow, which is their video editor. Canva has one, which if you ever, I'm not sure if teachers use Canva a lot, but
yeah.
that's a one that you can be like, hey, I need a picture of Mexico, highlight all the cities, and they can make stuff like that, which is super sweet. And there's even like, just like most companies, whether Adobe in Photoshop or an editing one, they have some sort of AI ingrained in them. And I think that's where like we got to understand like most AI is not a standalone product by itself, but it like does something for you. So ChatGPT is like the closest to straight up AI, but at the end of the day, it's a chat box, and that chat box gives you more information than most other people would give you in the chat box.
Yeah, so now we kind of understand AI, some of the different models. I think the question is thinking about your experience. You have a front row seat into how AI is affecting the job market in terms of technology. Would you be able to share a little bit about how AI is affecting jobs for our students in the future?
Yeah. And you're going to hear a lot of people being like, AI is going to take a lot of jobs. And I think jobs are going to change. I think it's what's thing at this point, and everything that's going to be coming after this just mentioned that this is like AI at this moment, and it might change in 10 years, just like the smartphone changed in 10 years. At this current moment, like it makes good, like great people even better, and it makes like mediocre people maybe a little better, but like at the end of the day, it amplifies what you are. And it's a tool, just like you give me a screwdriver, I can build a shelf. If you give a baby a screwdriver, they can't do anything. So is it taking jobs? I don't know totally about that, but what I am going to say is it's making some top performers go crazy. There's a lot of predictions out there, and I think this is a true one of just like there's going to be huge companies and huge things with like you need 10 people, one person, like to do big things where you needed like thousands of people before. So I think when it's cool when you're teaching, you're like, oh, I'm amplifying. Because AI can amplify people so much, when you're teaching somebody, that one person could do so much more. So I can't tell you, I'm not going to pretend I know, like, this is what the industry is 100% going to. But what I have noticed on people who use it versus who don't, they're able to learn faster. They're able to do more, and they're able to, like, make better things because they're able to do what they were able to do before. Plus, like, they now have, like, an army of interns that do exactly what they want. And so I think it's cool to see that this tool just really amplifies people.
Yeah, I think when you're saying amplifying, it's very refreshing because a little bit when we hear AI, you kind of have those science fiction where AI takes over the world. There's that a little bit of fear with it. It's thinking, is it being lazy using it or is it okay? I think we're curious your opinion because you are part of that industry. What do you see it as? What else kind of are you feeling with that fear?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of fear in everything, but there's also a lot of opportunity in everything. And so I I'm excited about it. It makes a human being learn faster. Imagine in a world where like you now have a personal tutor. I remember in the classroom when I was there, I was always annoyed that I couldn't ask a lot of questions because you only have one teacher, you got 20 students, you get like a 2 minute question and answer thing, and I'm like, I couldn't even tell you where to start. But it like might be nice where like the teacher's teaching something and you're like, I didn't get this. Can you explain this in a different way? Now everyone has something like that. So I think it again, it's a teaching tool. It's a tool. It's at the end of the day, right now, all it is a tool. And it's not going to take you over. And one thing that's kind of cool, I think teaching is like, hopefully, this is a teaching podcast. Teaching's never going away. One thing that you can't replace is human connection. And so, like, you guys now as teachers have the help where it's like, okay, I don't have to answer every question. And I can let, like, even like these, like, I have Johnny who's like brilliant. And I just, like, honestly, now he can get ahead a little bit more and learn a little more. And now I have someone else who's like falling behind. They have a chance to catch up. And, like, you don't have to slow down everyone at one time. So I think it's like a cool thing where you guys have a little helper for free almost. And, but like what you can't replace is you guys are going to be like, at the end of the day, I don't remember really what my second grade teacher taught me, but I remember like Miss Peterson was like, oh, she was just a great person and she did help me get to the next spot.
Yeah, so AI really has the potential for us as teachers as well. I think it's even more interesting to think about the potential it has for us in helping our students. You're talking about AI in terms of changing the workplace and how it can magnify and be used as a tool. How do we as teachers help our students prepare for these new jobs or this new technology? Because, memorizing maybe isn't the thing anymore. Of course, there's some level of that, but is there other skills that we should be helping to encourage or develop in our students for this technology?
Yeah. And I think that's a great question. And I think one thing that I think is helpful too is number one, I'm going to tell you all teachers, just because I'm going to say stuff, I would recommend you go ChatGPT is free. There's Gemini that's free. I would recommend just doing it yourself too. And you'll realize almost like 3 or 4 big things come up. Number one, reading becomes even more important because most of these things that are being designed right now are like a chat box. And so like I type and then I have to read a paragraph and I have to understand what it's saying. And like maybe if you're doing a report, you can copy and paste, but most things are like an action item that I just have to like do something based off of, or maybe have a second chat box that I have to respond to. So now reading is important. How do I read fast? How do I have comprehension? So that doesn't go away. So that's awesome. You got writing. That's even honestly even more important. And honestly, what is writing truly? It's thinking. And so it's like, how do I teach my kids, even from a young age, to like write well and think well? You got, and this is where like I like math. I'm an engineer. I'm a big math guy. I think math never goes away. One of the reasons is just such a logic thing. It's just like how do I think logically and think through the steps, and that still isn't going away. And especially now, especially AI makes mistakes about 20% of the time, which is a lot. And that may get better, but at the end of the day, even if it gets down to 2%, like you have to find that mistake, or you're the one who's like getting the accountability in that AI scenario. I do work, I use AI, I pass it out. Like if it has messed up, it still has Tom name on it. And so I have to know how to read well. And so I think like those are the big things that really go. And number four, and this is where I'm going to say just like learning. Like how do you learn how to learn fast? And how do you get through that like, hey, learning takes time and it's hard and it's tedious and it's I've tried and I failed and I tried and I failed. And like again, even in the scenario that I said before where like kids are trying to learn a new topic or whatever and like trying to ask questions, like you still need to learn. And how is learning? It's asking a lot of questions and trying to figure out those answers. And so reading, writing, math, learning doesn't go away. And so maybe it's less memorizing of like, hey, you need to know the War of 1812 happened on 1812, but it does matter that you're like, hey, in a big picture of history, there's a couple wars that did this thing, and you kind of need to know that kind of in basics just so you can ask the right questions. So yeah, that's like where I would start of being like, hey, those things don't change. And then the other thing I like to like really point out is I think one of the greatest quotes that you can say is you can't think outside the box without knowing the box well. And so again, ChatGPT is an input output. So I in and it gives me an answer of what I ask. And so I like to kind of point out like the example of gardening. If I want to start a garden and I don't know anything about gardening, I'm going to say, I want a garden, plant it for me. ChatGPT would give me an answer of like, oh, you should plant raspberries and peaches and coconuts and coffee, which here in Colorado, none of that will grow. So it would be a dumb question. And as I keep going down the ladders, if I know like just basics about gardening, I can be like, hey, I live in Colorado. I really am trying to grow some food for my family. I really want some lettuce variety. I want a starch variety, and I want any other vegetables that will grow. I have a very clayey soil, and I have a drip irrigation system. Can you give me plans for a drip irrigation system and what plants I should grow and how to grow it in a garden box? Now, it will give you a great answer, and you can output on that like super easily. And that's where like I bring up the gardening example because I think most people can relate to gardening a little bit, hopefully. But like
Yeah.
that's true about every single topic you're ever going to go to, whether it's coding, which is what I do a lot of, or like teaching or podcasting or video editing or steel framing. It doesn't matter the topic.
In a way, it's when you're saying how ChatGPT works, really, it's almost about teaching students how to ask the right questions. Because even the gardening thing, it's how do you ask these specific questions that you need for this specific answer.
Exactly. And the questions are becoming more and more. That's always been the case, but now like before you had to get the questions and the answers, now the answers can be a little easier. And now the questions are a little bit harder to make. So how do we get those kids to be kind of keep that curiosity that they start with, but in a more detailed and more structured approach?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that teachers can really think about is we have different techniques for helping students frame different questions and really focusing more on asking the right questions. I feel like I'm dating myself, but when I was in elementary school, if I wanted to find something out, we'd go to the library and there'd be these like big, I don't know what to call them, like drawers you'd pull open to find a book. You'd first figure out what book you wanted, then figure out the drawer in the Dewey Decimal System and figure out what book you want. Like a book on like, let's say gardening. I wanted to figure out how to garden a potato. I'd have to look into this big drawer, I had to find the card for this book, and then go find the book in the library, and then hope the book has something important in there that I can use. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
start it over again if it doesn't, and or try another library. Like it was such a different experience. I'm sure if there's kids listening, they're like, "What are you talking about?" But I feel like we really have evolved in the last 20, 30 years to be at this place, and so it really is a crazy privilege what we're moving into.
Yeah. And it's so cool. And I mean, this is where it's like we were told like when we get the internet, all we needed to learn is information. And what we have found out is people are too lazy to look at that information. And so
Mm.
now we have an opportunity with ChatGPT. And this was like, I think it's more opportunistic than scary, is like most people are too lazy to learn. And so you have the opportunity to like, we have a way to filter this information really easily. And like now when I'm looking about potatoes, I can say, tell me everything about potatoes. I'm trying to grow it in Colorado. Give me some information. It can give me some details. I now have a starting point to go off of and not like I only lost 20 minutes of my time instead of 4 hours doing the library thing. So,
Back in the day, what did we do with ourselves?
yes.
That's funny. Yeah, 4 hours. That feels about accurate. Was so different, such a different experience. Okay, yeah. So we've kind of got a little bit off topic there, but it was just so funny. I'm thinking about just it made me think about how it has shifted in terms of your job. What is the balance between using AI and then also using your own knowledge and figuring out things? Like, what's that balance that you're finding for yourself that I think students might need in the future as well?
Yeah, and this is probably where I'm going to lose your audience. I'm going to get real code heavy and I'll come back out a little
Okay.
bit. I hopefully I'll put it as a big picture. So I write a lot of software and I do it both in my job and personally. And so personally is where I kind of just go crazy on AI to see what's going on. I feel like it's dumb to not learn what's going on because I think a lot of people either want to be like, it's amazing, it can do everything, or this is dumb, it's replacing me. And so like there's gotta be a middle ground of like, hey, this is a tool, we gotta use it. What that looks like in reality is like a lot of like at one point I was trying to do these things, they were like, hey, you could just like one shot a website or one shot an app where you could just say like, hey, I want a website, and you would give this paragraph that says what you want it to do, and then it would spit out a ton of code. It would be like thousands of like millions of lines, and it would like kind of work, but it'd be broken. And you would like then be like, okay, I can fix it because I have the tools to fix it. And then it would take you like much longer than you just writing it from scratch to like fix this garbage app. And this is where it's like I want to bring up the point of, remember, it's a statistical model, so it chooses the average and it goes with that. And like unfortunately most of the code is pretty average, and what you need to write is good code for stuff to work. And all the good code is like in Facebook as their private repo. It's in my company's private repo. It's, and it's not like public for stuff to use. So it's just taking the average. And what ends up happening is you putting a lot of time trying to do like this big picture thing and it doesn't work. And so what you kind of have to do is more, again, still the same tools that as an engineer and any engineer you ask, is breaking down stuff. And so now I used to have to break down stuff in like a single file and I'd have to write that file. Now I can break stuff down into like 4 or 5 files. It will output stuff. I can read code. So you're reading code. I see kind of what I want and what I don't want, what would work, what wouldn't work. I'm testing that code immediately and being like, hey, this didn't work because of this thing. Please don't break anything. And so when I use it a lot, it's a lot of like, how do I make it so it's smaller chunks that I can, at least if I need to fix it later, because right now ChatGPT is not good enough to fix like super large code bases, or like Gemini's not good enough to fix super large code bases at scale, though it's getting there, it's getting better. At least I know where to fix it and do stuff and still understand it as I'm building. And so now that I'll get out of the code world a little bit and just kind of hopefully get in the teacher world, if you're doing a history report and I say, write me a report on 1812 and what happened in that year, and then the student hands it in, you should be able to tell immediately if they don't know, because what's going to happen is you're going to be like, okay, sounds good. Thanks for the report. What happened? Like, give me like a brief summary. Like, you need to summarize this really well. And like maybe if you, especially if you're doing like a section on 1812, like you'll have a couple details that there's no way they didn't read in that chat GPT. And now they don't know what's going on. And like you can tell that versus like, and maybe they still use ChatGPT for the whole thing in their whole research project, but like if they just did like, hey, I want to know what happened in January, and then they read that and they looked at it and were like, oh, sweet, I didn't realize the war started then. And then it's like, give me more details on why the war started. And now they're reading that stuff instead of just handing a report. So all that to say is like instead of like, hey, we're just gonna one shot this whole paper and turn it in. I'm gonna just go by small section and kind of see what's going on, so I as a human being can understand it, because that is what's gonna matter in the long term of both for my job and for students in the future. So hopefully that's helpful.
That's a really important differentiation. It's not just write a report on it in the War of 1812 and then you give this report to the teacher. Let me understand this piece or that piece so that I can put it into my research paper. It's a very different experience. What are some shifts, do you think, as a classroom teacher that we could make to start to incorporate this AI technology in teaching students the best that it has to offer, and not so much, like you said, the research paper just submitted that hasn't been even read? How do we teach students to use it in a way that is most effective for their learning, do you think?
Yeah, and I'm gonna be I'm not a teacher, so you guys have a lot of things, but I have a lot of ideas that I
Yeah.
think should be focused on, especially I think there was a shift from one point we had like, hey, we're having computers, so we need to go all the way to only typing and like nothing, everything's on an iPad, everything's there. I would argue you almost go back the pendulum and just force people to handwrite stuff again. And not necessarily because I believe they're cheating or believe anything else, but especially because like, hey, even if you're gonna copy it word for word on ChatGPT, you have to read it and write it. And that's just like is gonna force you to think about it. I am a very tech focused guy. I have a ton of computers. I'm always looking up what tech is doing it. And I still have a handwritten notebook because it's the best way to think. And I think if we teach kids to do that, like that is ultimately going to sound counterintuitive to them, but like it will pay off dividends if now they know how to think, now they know how to write. And also like small things of like force people to talk, like do speeches or do little like presentations where like you can't just copy and paste the ChatGPT thing, because you have to like be up there and talking to people, and like that communication never goes away. And even if you like make your whole business off of AI, at the end of the day, you're selling to humans and not AI. I think what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to be like, I'm not going to just buy things straight out of AI. I'm going to need like a human interaction of some sort. So that still needs to be taught. How do we force it to be like you have to do a lot of more assignments in person, or a little more like focus, like you can't really fake that as much? But also, I think there's a nice thing on the other end of like, hey, as teachers, again, you have a tutor that's like there for you. So like why not use it and like have it in the classroom and be like, I need you guys to all research this, and tomorrow we're going to give a short speech on these topics. And that's how we're going to learn history today is you're going to research why the first model Congress happened. You're going to research why Lexington and Concord happened. And so that's what their homework is just like, I don't care if you use ChatGPT all you want, but you have to give that 5 minute speech of why we're doing this section. And it just like forces you to be in person and be focused on those things. But also they're gonna have to that tool is gonna they're what they're gonna be using in their job. And so like why be like you can't use it?
That piece is so significant. It's really actually essential that we start incorporating it and not act like it's bad. We get frustrated when things are just handed in and not thought about. But like you said, it's going to be used in this job situation. So finding ways that we can encourage students to use it, like you said, presenting or putting it down in physical form, writing it down is a huge piece. Different ideas to really incorporate their learning.
Yes.
Yeah, those are some really good ideas.
Yeah, and again, they're using it, they're going to use it. And so like how do we use and just like I think there was I don't know if you were there when computers were starting to go around in schools. Our school was kind of behind the times. They were like people fought it a lot. And it's like, why are we fighting this? At the end of the day, like people are going to be using your computer. I'm on my computer 8 hours a day. It's something I'm going to use. So like, why fight that?
Yeah, yeah, it's so funny when new technology comes, there is sometimes this back and forth. Is it good? Is it bad? But at the end of the day, it's like, is it useful? Are we using it? And then being honest about how we are using it. Like you said, that's very true. It was computers were seen as this thing of the future, and is it, going to destroy our kids' minds? So your brain's going to turn to mush. And it's like, well, we're all using it. We're all experiencing it. We wouldn't be doing this without a computer right now, right? Like this is allowing
Yeah.
these virtual podcasts. It's allowing things that wouldn't have been possible. So there's so many benefits we need to focus on as well. So I guess just kind of finishing it off here, in terms of where you're at with AI, what is exciting you?
I mean, I love it. I just think it's so cool. Not because I'm lazy and I don't want to do work, though. There's benefits to being a little lazy, but I think it's cool because you get to learn things so much faster. Of like, I have had to be on so many like research things. I'm reading like documentation and code all the time of like what is happening, why is stuff happening. I've spent like, for example, I've spent a whole day before being like, should we go in this direction or should I go in this direction? And all I did the entire day was read documentation from like two different websites that is like pages and pages and pages. And then I had to be like, well, this is probably the way I want to go. And now I can just be like, which is honestly like no value add to most people. Like that's just like I have to do it because I just pulled the short straw. Now I can say like, hey, why would I choose one or these other ones? And so I get a basic synopsis. And about 50% of the time, like I get the question I need answered, which is like, hey, this one's better for simplicity and speed, and this one's better for like super complex things and like for large enterprise systems. And you're like, okay, I kind of have to use this one because I'm an enterprise system and that's what I use. And like, I don't care that this one's simple. And usually that would take someone a day to just like read. So that's like super like cool to have that sped up. Also like a lot of prototype websites I kind of made up with my buddies. You're just like, can like kind of show it, be like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you like? And that used to be a day process of like, is it worth putting 4 or 5 hours into making this UI look weird? Now it takes 30 seconds of like, should I pursue this direction? And they'll be like, yeah, I love that one. I hate that one. And you're like, great, let's go with this direction. And that just saves you time. And so that's like for me for codes, but like, how do we like do this in other things? And I'm going to say like, first, before I go to the teaching one, a personal example. I need to plan a camping trip this last week, and I knew I kind of wanted to go to this place in Colorado. Usually I'd spend like 3 hours, 4 hours researching hikes or like camping spots and food spots. And I just typed in it took me about 10 minutes to just be like, what do I want? And I'm like, I want a hike that's 8 to 10 miles. I want a pretty mountain view. I want to be in this spot, Durango. I want a campsite that I'm willing to pay for, but I just want to make sure they have spots. And I want to at one point get a breakfast that's a normal diner, not super nice, not super chill. And it planned about 80% of my trip in like 5 minutes. That is the thing where like I think people are like, hey, why fight that? Like now you get time with your family, now you get time with your kids, now you get time with your friends instead of having to look up hikes. And
Yeah.
so now look at that teaching. That could be a teaching plan where it's like, I know I need to teach about the War of 1812. What should be the things I'm focusing on? It looks through. Hopefully, if you're a history teacher, you know enough about 1812 to be like, that's a mistake. We didn't attack the Germans in 1812. It was the British. And so you can like still fix things, but now your plans are a little shorter and you can focus on like, how can I work on Timmy's behavior instead of how do I focus on just like the overall structure of a lesson.
Yeah. I like that personal example too. And it's not just for the professional world, it's actually for our personal world as well.
Yes, yes. And my tip for everyone is, again, I said it in the beginning, I said it in, use one of, like, they're free online if you want to use a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude or a Grok. I'm honestly a big one of like, it's 20 bucks a month. Right now we're on the golden age of AI where they are right now selling it for a loss if you get that 20 bucks a month because of how much computing power it costs them to use it. But they're like still trying to beat out the seven competitors and they need to be the cheapest option, and 20 bucks was the price that everyone said like, hey, we're just going to agree is 20 bucks despite how much it cost us. And so like in a time when you like can try to learn things, like I just use it and like try it a bunch of things and you'll find out prompts that are good and prompts that like, oh, this prompt didn't give me the answer that I wanted. Everyone should get like a small subscription and try it out and just see what's going on.
Before they say no to it, before they look too negative on it, maybe just try it out and see if you like it.
Yes.
So, along with your kind of excitement, are there any concerns you have for AI in terms of the future for yourself and even for education?
Yeah. And but like,
Taking over the world,
yeah, it could take over the world. I don't know. We'll see.
all the
I,
movies.
yeah, we all watch the sci-fi movies, and maybe that's the case. And maybe in 5 years, we're like, yeah, we're useless bio waste, but I hope not. I think in reality of like some of the concerns, I think concerns for like kids I have is like, it is easy to not think about it, but that's always been the case. The example that me and my roommate used to talk in college, we did a lot of calculus homework, and it's a very tedious process to go through each step, and you'll get the answer at the end. If you mess up any step in that process of like these 20 steps you had to do, it would destroy everything. And so one option is to struggle and figure out where you made mistakes and fight for it. And like often you use something like Chegg to like kind of help you through that. And there was other people who were like, sweet, now my homework's going to take, instead of an hour, it's going to take 5 minutes because all I have to do is copy this paper. And so ChatGPT gives that same exact thing you can do, which is I don't have to think if I don't want to. I could just write this down and go out. And that's really sad if like that's the emphasis is like my goal is to get an answer. And so like how do you change that shift to be like my goal is to figure out how to think? And so like my concern is just like I know some people who just try to want the answer and that's all they want. And I think ChatGPT gives you that a little easier. It kind of like A stunts your development and B can't like in the end like your school grade matters very little in second grade. But it will matter. That compounds in high school and college in your job when you can't do that because you can't think. So that's like probably the largest concern I have. And I think the other concern is just like here all the time. If you go on my LinkedIn or X, they're like everyone's jobs are gonna die. Like no job is useful. Like I think it's hard because some people I can tell like have actually worked with it and they're like this is what I'm scared of, like this intern's job is gonna die, and that's probably true. Like there's a lot of people who are like what's this intern even doing, but in reality what happens is there's really good marketers and salespeople that have literally been like, hey, this does way more than it does, just assuming like, hey, hopefully in the next 10 years like something catches up and we can kind of be the product market fit then. So there's pretty much really high sales of like everything this can do so much, and then in reality it only does this much, and that's how it's been since AI has come out, and it's gotten better and it's gotten better, but they always promise this since day one, and it still has not happened. And so until that happens, you have to just live in the world of like how can I take advantage of this tool now and not how can I use this tool like later it might take my job. Like that's just like there's going to be something else you have to figure out, and that's fine. That's what it's always been, and that's how it's always going to be. The doctors of 1950 do very things from the doctors of 2020, and that's the lawyers, software engineers, the teachers. They all do a little different things than they did before, and they have to. And that's a good thing. The one story I'm going to give on this sales marketing to like actual what they do is there was this company out in UK that this happened like literally less than a month ago that said, hey, we have an AI builder app. You tell us what you want to build, we'll build it for you immediately and it will work one shot it. And they said they had AI. This happened for about a year and all of a sudden they've gone bankrupt, and it's come out that they had like somewhat of an AI that was working, but for most things they just hired a bunch of people in India and they would do all the work for them, and they were just like stuck doing that.
Oh my word.
And so like this is one company that's been found out. And I'm gonna tell you right now there's more than one charlatan. And that's just the one that found out. I always like say like beware of these headlines because like they have to sell a product and they are going to sell it more than they are. And so that's where I'm always like, buy the $20 subscription, see what they actually can do. And you'll see like it can do a lot and do super cool things, but like it's just not totally where it's at yet. And there's just like some things that you just never know. And so, yes,
There's still a lot of need for humans, is what I'm hearing you say. There's still a lot of
yes,
need for critical thinking.
critical thinking has not gone away. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't realize that people were promising such things and then having somebody else outsource them. That
Yes.
seems very, very shady.
AI is the snake oil right now. And so like there are some companies, like I would say there's four like super like Google's doing a lot of good work, Anthropic, OpenAI. I think there's one other one. But like those were like, hey, we're really prepping and doing a lot of really good stuff. Meta is another good one. They're like, hey, we're actually moving forward. And every once in a while, other people have models that come out. And then there's other companies that are like, well, let's hope they do something and we can like pretend it does more than it does. And so it's
Yeah.
just like, how do we work with those two things?
Yeah. That kind of balance between the reality and what's been promised.
Yes.
So kind of closing us off a little bit, one of the questions that I think teachers are going to have, you mentioned that subscription for $20, but there are a couple sites that are free, right?
Yes. And so every company that has a paid version has a free version. ChatGPT has a free version. Grok has a free version. OpenAI has Anthropic has a free one. And you can use all those and you can type in chat box and you can get like basics and that's great. So that's a free version. I'm pretty sure Google has a deal with a lot of teachers. If you are a teacher, they have a free version too. I don't quote me totally on that. That AI changes fast, but I think that was true as of like February. And I think the one that is for sure free on that you guys is like it's called Google Workspaces. And I think this might be a good one for teachers is like what it is. So how AI trains right now is all of the internet is now being trained into one model. They have one where you can like upload a couple documents or upload a couple things and be like, I want you to use this and do something. So like if you have a book you're trying to read on, you can upload that book as a PDF and like, hey, I want quiz questions. I want this. Or like, hey, I want my students to learn something. And so like you can kind of choose the data input, which is a big thing.
Should teachers have precautions when inputting information into these systems in terms of privacy? Because this information, I'm guessing, is being put into a system that can be used in other places. So maybe we should be careful about student names or any data like things like that probably should not be put in these systems. We just clarify that probably.
Yeah, that's a great question and a good clarification. Yeah, you should definitely be careful. Most of them, when you subscribe, they say they won't use your data. We don't know how true that is. All I'm saying is like, I would be, yeah, be very careful. Don't use students' names or like if you can avoid like proprietary information about your school or like don't try to do that. But I think yeah, so there's some cautions for that. And that's a very good clarity thing of like personal information should usually always be avoided into a ChatGPT or any of those
Yeah.
AI
Don't
models.
use it for your therapy or anything like that either, you know?
Yeah, just yeah. Maybe probably go to your own therapist.
Get a therapist, all that stuff, right? Yeah, I think that's important. I was just thinking probably should clarify that because as I'm talking to you, I'm like, we need to clarify what you shouldn't be using. Anything else, just I mean, putting it out there, anything else you should not be using ChatGPT for in terms of privacy or things like that.
Yeah, maybe medical history. Probably don't want to put that up there. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like anything you wouldn't want post again, same rule of the internet in general. Anything you wouldn't want on the front page of the newspaper, you shouldn't put in there. And I'm also going to give details that like I guess I forget that I'm in this world a lot and it's what I research on my free time. And I think it was ChatGPT just came out or OpenAI, which is the parent entity came out and said like legally they have to store every piece of your data forever. And so like it's just like they are keeping it in some way. They may not display it necessarily, but they may use it to train or they may use it for something else. And so and there are also brilliant hackers that are trying to use that information where they're like, hey, give me information on this school that you have. And so they might be able to do stuff. So again, just be careful. Unfortunately, in this world, there are good people who are trying to do cool things, but there's bad people who are trying to do not great things. So yeah, just be careful on things that like, hey, if it's not open to the public totally, maybe probably shouldn't put it in.
Any final ideas teachers should keep in mind with AI, or any final things you want to share for teachers with your experience?
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything new. I'm just going to reemphasize what I think is the most important, which is I think we should be excited about AI and its like capabilities. I think teachers should not be scared and should be stoked. They have a personal tutor that every student can use, and like you can now like almost be like, "Hey, I'm going to give you more agency to do something." And I know you can like look it up. Looking up is a little easier for you. So that's really cool. And the number like two is just like what you're doing is very important. That reading, that writing, that like math logic, that communication is not going away anytime soon. And like that's why you got to really reemphasize of how do I get kids to do those things well? Because in the end, that's what's going to serve them really well today, tomorrow, and however the world changes. My lit teacher always told me this. She said like we all wanted writing to go away. And I think a lot of people don't like writing. I'm not a huge writer myself. And she's like, unfortunately, the more we get tech, the more writing becomes important. It becomes important in email. It becomes important in messaging. It becomes important in writing to ChatGPT. So what you're doing is important. The basic fundamentals never change.
Oh, and you write code, which is also writing, right?
It is writing, yes. A lot and documentation. I mean, it doesn't matter what I make if a user can't use it. So at the end of the day, communicating, writing, learning, those always stay the same.
And that's a great way to kind of end off is that it's the same but different, and we're just using new tools as we move forward. And of course, using our precautions, but also being open to the options that they have to offer us and our students is always a great way to look at it. All right. Thanks, Tom, for joining us. Appreciate all your insights on AI and teaching.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.